to make good theater to me, or live performance, I feel like you have to be able to take a rib out of your body and be like, this is me.
Filmmaker magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Jaclyn Bethany is an actor. She sat down with me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work.
When you get a new acting role, do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process?
For me, like what I'm interested in when I'm doing a new part, or when I'm thinking about what kind of stuff I want to produce or do, is something childlike and relatable. And going back to my imagination and why I got into this whole career in the first place. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I actually realized that process fully until I started teaching other actors acting class. And I think it's interesting because when you're a kid, you fully let go. And I think it's really hard for us in our daily lives to totally just let everything go and be in the room, no matter how dark you're going, how funny, whatever character you're playing. It's like, you just have to find that like groundedness and like, I don't care what anybody else thinks. So for me, I guess it's a lot of that. Part of it for me also is coming from the text, and it depends on what it is. You know, plays are obviously different than film or whatever, but I think having grown up in the South and having the really sort of rich access to all the writers' work that came from there really inspired me. So I always think about the words and why I want to say them, or why I want to do that role or that show or film or whatever. And I also think about the other people that I'm working with or collaborating with on the project, and how we can work together. And, you know, because every actor works differently, and there's no one, we're all humans, we're all very different. And I think but what's special about acting is it's like you kind of have a language or the special language with another person, and it only lasts for a moment or a period of time. And yeah, I'm feeding off other people, I'm feeding off the text and building on what comes from that.
You know, maybe I should have asked this in the beginning. Are you a director who acts, or an actor who directs? And is this even as a question annoying? I
think that's a good question, but I think the labeling is a bit annoying, because I think that, you know, for example, in Europe, I feel like multi-hyphenates and this sort of art, and it's kind of like coming back a little bit more, it's more accepted in America. But I think for a long time, especially when I lived in LA, there was a lot of like, what are you? What do you want to do? And like, I think it all feeds into each other. And, you know, I know how hard acting is just on every level. And I think as a director, you have a real respect and appreciation for the actors having an acting background. I think they feed each other, and I think there's been a period of time where I did not want to act. I didn't want to be I had some bad experiences, and I didn't want to put myself through it again, whatever. And I think that made me a stronger director. It made me a stronger actor when I came back to it. And I've been lucky enough to work with some pretty amazing actors as a director, and also had mentors and professors and directors that I've worked with that have been really instrumental to me. And some of them do a lot of different things, and some of them don't. But I think I didn't wake up as a kid. I wasn't a kid with the camera that at 3 years old, or it was like, I want to be a director. But I knew that I had a special talent or gift for telling stories. And the way that I was able to do that at first was sort of I would draw the pictures in like on big pieces of paper, and my mom would write the stories out before I could write. And then I started acting doing musical theater because that was what was accessible to me where I lived. But it wasn't until a couple of years after college that I thought I started thinking about directing.
How did you come to land at the way you tell cinematic stories? Like, what was the thing that formed that approach?
Well, I think that's like ever evolving. I think at first, the first short that I wrote was, set in the South about a Southern family. I had no idea what I was doing. I just thought of this story that I wanted to tell, and I wanted to do it. I knew where I wanted to do it. I wanted to film it at my grandparents' house. And I think that was like very pure and just me wanting to explore something. And I think from there, I was able, when I was in London, I have a lot of friends that are writers and artists and actors over there. And I just saw a bunch of stuff, and I continued to like watch and read and learn and like, what am I really interested in? And I think that kind of shifted, whereas I was sort of like doing a lot of different things. You could maybe always tell that they were rooted in me. I don't know. I don't want to watch the stuff that I made in film school and stuff, but like, I think that there was always something around doing things different and bold and strange and very feminine, but like, I'm definitely inspired by certain directors and stuff. But I remember, like the first, at AFI, you have to make 3 cycle films, and they hold all of them. No, but they're not, you can't ever see them. The public can't. And the first film that I made was this because they want you to explore and do different genres and stuff that you wouldn't really do. And I did a vampire film, which I'm not super interested in at all. But my directing professor said basically he was like, wow, that was really interesting and bold, and I wouldn't expect that from you. Which I don't know, because I was quiet and sat in the back or something, but I think there's that sort of perspective and the way that I saw the world and my background up until I was probably about 26 probably shapes what I'm making now.
And what changes it as you go? Is it the things you make that actually change it, or the stuff you feed on?
I mean, I don't know that I'm ever I want to make a movie like that, or I want to make a movie just like that. But I think that when I do see other people, other filmmakers I admire exploring things that feel different or uncomfortable or interesting and intellectual and make me think, I think that definitely inspires me. It's also having all these ideas all the time, and how do you streamline. But I think from each project, and what I'm working on now, one is the script that I did not write, and the other is a script that I co-wrote, and then I'm doing a play. I'm acting in a play. So it's all different, and they all feed each other. And I think that, to me, even though they're all different and special and challenging in their own ways, but I kind of built that for myself. And I also started making shorts again, which I think I didn't do for a while because I thought they took so much out of you. But they're a very interesting way to explore an idea, to test things out, see if things aren't working before you go into a larger story. You're
incredibly prolific. You just said that you're working on 3 different things at the same time. It almost sounds like you're saying you need to have all of those plates spinning in order for it to work for you.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I'm very lucky that all these things are getting made or are getting produced, or in that things feel tangible now and are happening, and after sort of a difficult couple of years. But it's just in the industry. But I think it's, been yeah, sometimes I get opportunities and I'm like, should I do that? Or is that gonna make me crazier? Or is it gonna make me better? And I'm also like, well, I think the things that scare me the most now are the things that I'm most interested in doing, because to me, that's why we do this. Yeah, I think I've always been a person that has liked to have multiple things going on. And I always was in like a play and like in high school and like did ballet and then like was on it. Like I always had multiple, I seem to, thrive doing that. And I have periods too where it does feel slow. And I think when you're not doing it, you're missing something you love. It's almost like a person, but it's not. It's this thing, it's an art. It's this thing that you like can't live without.
Yeah. Whenever we have someone on the show that is doing equal amounts of work as a director, particularly not in things that they are actually acting in, and actually acting in things that they're not directing at the same time, I think it's important to ask this question, which is, are there things that you've learned about directing actors that has come directly from your experience strictly as an actor? And when you go back and forth like this, does that work as an actor inform the directing work, and how specifically does it inform that?
I hope that people are working on projects with me or with other directors that they really believe in and that they really want to tell and be a part of. And I think that trust is everything. And I think that I don't try to change a performance. You cast someone because you believe that they are right for the role, or they're going to bring their best self to the performance. And to me, I think the best directors, and I also don't have, on the things I do, I don't have a lot of time and a lot of money, and maybe it would change if I did, but we're looking at the overall picture, and the actors are so integral to the world building. And I think having them understand what it is when you walk on the set and feeling like you're actually a part of it and in the world, and you can have a dialogue, but you also need to get it done. Like everyone's kind of on the same page. And like you said, like a director sets the tone, which can be stressful. And there's sometimes pressure. And when I first started directing, I took everything personally. And like if somebody was having a bad day or being awful or everything was going wrong, I thought it was me. And so I would literally like be, crying in the bathroom, and this stuff still happens. But I think as I did more and more, and also was on the other side of it sometimes as an actor or whatever, I just was able to be like, oh, it's not me at all. This is who knows what's going on with it. Like my job is to get them to be present and make this with me. And I think, and with everyone involved. So I think it's about trust, and it's about being able to shape this performance and the story with that performer and letting them feel like they have the freedom to do that.
Can you describe your fascination with Tennessee Williams?
Yes. So I think because I am from Mississippi, we're both from Mississippi, I read I believe it was A Streetcar Named Desire was the first play of his that I read. We used to have to read it in high school. I don't know if they do anymore, and I was just fascinated by the depiction of the women. And I thought it was pretty profound considering the time it was written, and that I was like, oh, this person is from where I'm from, and like has gone off and was this hugely successful playwright and celebrity, really, like person. As I got sort of, as I grew, at the first play I saw on Broadway I saw musicals, but it was Sarah Paulson and Jessica Lange in The Glass Menagerie. And I think that really like struck something within me. And I felt like I was seeing a part of me. And I don't think I had seen that on stage or in that way before. So I guess from a young age, I was very drawn to it. And then when I was in college, I saw Cate Blanchett do The Pullman Streetcar, and that really affected me. So it was always sort of a part of me, but I didn't produce it. I didn't do anything related to it. I did a couple scenes in college or something. And, but during the pandemic, when I was home in Mississippi, I really like dove in to a couple of his biographies, and was really finding strange similarities with some of his family history, my family with his sister, and his mother. And so I think, yeah, all of that. And I think when the theater where I grew up was doing The Glass Menagerie, and I was Laura. So that was the first time I was able to be given that part. And it was around the same age, I think, that Sarah Paulson. It was just like all these like weird, like, similarities. That was 2 years ago. And then I've done a couple of, when I started my theater company, that I run in New Orleans with my friend Lynn Gathright, we found these early drafts of Streetcar and Menagerie that are not performed a lot. They're not part of his known one acts, I guess, but we wanted to do something different. And I felt like you're never done with a writer like that. And so I think that it will always be something I come back to just from a deep personal connection.
What have you learned from having your own theater in New Orleans, and what has that experience been like for you as a creator?
Well, it's always been something I've wanted to do. And I think I was just looking for the right time or right place. And I ended up in New Orleans because I got a teaching professorship. And the theater scene in New Orleans is very lacking. And it used to be much more robust. And there were a lot of, infrastructural financial issues. And, the only theater company that has a space is Le Petit, which has, historically been there for a year ever. And we're trying to do different, bold, female-centered work. And we started with these more well-known writers and plays, and in this case, they're Tennessee Williams and Edward Albee. And we're kind of doing this like feminist look and approach to it, which is really exciting. And we hope to also do a new play festival next year with all female playwrights, female identifying playwrights. But another thing that was important to us is creating this creative dialogue and this artistic dialogue with New York and with these other places, because that's how we're going to grow. And to see the kind of work that's being produced by similar companies here, LA, London, whatever, because I think that there's only so much you can achieve in these smaller communities, and we want to go beyond that, but we want to bring what we're seeing and doing to the community there. And as someone from the South, I have a deep respect and love for where I grew up, and I want to be able to give back. And we've been very lucky to have support to start a company, but it's really difficult, and we're taking it sort of show by show right now because of just funding. Again, there's not that many companies, but they're all competing for the same money. We're hopeful, but there's not, the only way we'll be able to continue is if people come see our shows. Yeah. And it is just not the same there. And it was like, and now we're a little bit more established or whatever, but I was surprised at the lack of interest in theater there in such a great American city.
Do you think more money is what would help, or more time is what it would take?
It will take both.
Yeah.
But also I think it's a generational divide as well. I think between what people can afford, and if people want to spend $35 to go see a play, or they want to go drink at a bar in the Quarter or the Marigny. I mean, this is just that town. But you know, it was cool because a lot of my students came, and many of them, or most, I think all of them came, but I maybe made it a requirement. But they also, some of them had never seen a play before.
Wow.
Or they didn't know that a play could be like what we were doing. They thought that it was just you sit and you watch and that's it.
I mean, that has to be gratifying, right? When they come to you and say, I didn't know this was possible.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. And it is what I felt then in a different way, I'm sure. But, you know, and whether they are actually ever going to go into the arts, but like they saw something that affected them and excited them, and to get, you know, 18 to 22-year-olds to sit in a chair for longer than 30 minutes is hard. Yeah. So, not look at their phones, but you know, so that, yes, is very gratifying. And that is what is you know, even people that we didn't know or were scared of their opinions or whatever, like seem to enjoy, like get something and find something. And I think that was also interesting because you feel like in theater, film is so different because it takes years and years. It's so long. It's like you never know what's going to happen. If it's ever going to come out. If it's like, to make good theater to me, or live performance, I feel like you have to be able to take a rib out of your body and be like, this is me. This is what I'm showing you. If you don't like it, it doesn't matter.
What is the biggest thing you've learned from teaching acting about acting?
Listening.
Tell me what you mean. I'm listening.
I think you can tell, like, if you were, it's just, observant. And like, I think being a team where you're the person that is observing in that way, you can tell if someone is listening to their scene partner or listening to you it doesn't matter if they take, it informs the whole thing in a different way. And I feel like I see so many performances where people are just saying the lines and they're not reacting and they're not present. And maybe there's a couple moments, and I'm not interested, me, Jaclyn, I'm much more interested in those kinds of actors. And I think that perspective and those kinds of characters, but that's a personal thing. But, you know, I think, but that's something you can take to anything you do.
Is there a role, particularly on stage, that you haven't played that you would want to play?
I would say Blanche. Yeah. The other one I'm sort of doing, but it wasn't someone that, the other two, yeah. Laura, yes. And I've done, but the other part I'm about to do kind of came to me through other parties. And then I was like, oh yeah. But it wasn't like a conscious dream role of mine, but it's Honey in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. So
it's so interesting with Hamlet, men kind of grow out of it. But with Blanche, you grow into it.
You grow into Blanche.
You grow into Blanche. It's so interesting. It's almost like you get to see people at their best.
Yeah. And I understand that we did this one act that was later became Streetcar. And I was the Stella character and my co-artistic director was Blanche. And she needed to be Blanche. That is her role too. And this was her, I have time, you know? So it's just, that to me is beautiful. And like, we need more roles like that too.
How do you juggle the desire to present new work in this theater where the clientele kind of is an older crowd expecting kind of a traditional lineup, you know, whereas you also enjoy, though, classics and wanting to present that?
Well, I think because it's already in the cultural zeitgeist and conversation, and right now we're trying to cultivate an audience.
Right.
So if we're doing an unknown play by a writer, it will just be very difficult. And like, that is obviously 100% something we want to do. But I think we're choosing work that feels culturally relevant too. And I think that we're having interesting conversations and perspectives on it that I don't think a lot of places have do or done. And like, I think that's really interesting. And when I'm researching and sort of looking at different productions or, you know, just doing dramaturgical work or watching recordings of different performances. And I think that also, I don't know, I feel like that to me is a really integral part of why you do something. And like and of course, nobody has all the time in the world to just sit and do but that work to me has been done when I get in the room. But you're always exploring and finding, and the ideas come from one rehearsal. And that's what I love about theater, because in film, unless you have a lot of budget, there isn't really a rehearsal process.
So where does your heart actually live, you know, in the theater or in film? I mean, this is an unfair question, I guess, but I'm just saying, like, if you had all the money in the world and there wasn't a worrying about, you know, advancing in a career, like, what if you could just do what you loved? Would it be the theater or would it be films?
I don't know.
I mean, I think that's great that you can honestly not know, where you're doing fulfilling work in both of these mediums.
Yes, but I wasn't for a while. I was really only doing film and stuff, and I think that I missed theater, and I think it's made me a better director, actor, human by going back to that.
It's so true, right?
I would tell anybody that wants to be an actor to go stand up on a stage and do something before you get into film or TV or whatever, because that is the place to try and make mistakes and work through it. And like, as an actor in a film, you have such little control. In theater, you have way more. It's all about, and I think that gives you autonomy. And yeah, and I just missed that.
Jaclyn Bethany, thank you so much. Please come back on the show, and please keep in touch with us, even though you're not in town.
Yeah, I will. I shall.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.